The heroes we admire most on screen might promote ideas that would be catastrophic if applied to real life. Yet millions of us walk out of theaters wanting to be just like them. Today, we're diving into the hidden philosophical errors of cinema's most celebrated heroes. These are not just plot holes or character flaws. They're fundamental ethical mistakes that, if followed in real life, could lead to disaster. I'll be breaking down 7 iconic movie heroes and the false philosophies they represent. For each one, we'll explore what makes their worldview problematic from a philosophical perspective. Let's dive in. First up is Batman from The Dark Knight.
You took my sonar concept and applied it to every phone in the city. This is wrong.
I've got to find this man, Lucius.
A hero whose methods raise serious ethical questions about surveillance and control. In Christopher Nolan's masterpiece, Batman activates a citywide surveillance system that can access every cell phone in Gotham, effectively spying on the entire population without their consent. His justification? It's necessary to catch the Joker. This embodies a dangerous philosophy. Freedom can be sacrificed for security. It's the same reasoning used by authoritarian regimes throughout history that certain rights can be suspended to protect people from threats. But this directly contradicts Immanuel Kant's ethical framework, which argues that humans should always be treated as ends in themselves, never merely as means to an end. By surveilling innocent citizens without their knowledge, Batman treats them as mere tools in his quest to catch a criminal. Even Lucius Fox recognizes the ethical problem, telling Batman this is wrong and threatening to resign. Yet many viewers still side with Batman because the film frames it as a necessary evil. Ask yourself, if someone in real life had the power to listen to every conversation in your city, would you be comfortable with that? Even if they promised to only use it against bad guys, who decides who the bad guys are? Batman's surveillance system represents a slippery slope toward what philosopher Jeremy Bentham called the panopticon, a system where people are potentially always being watched, which leads to self-censorship and the death of true freedom. Moving on to our second philosophically misguided hero, Katniss Everdeen from The Hunger Games. While we all root for Katniss as she fights against the Capitol's oppression, her approach reveals a troubling philosophical error. It is always right to destroy the system, no matter what the cost. Katniss becomes a symbol of revolution primarily through emotional reactions and personal trauma, not through a coherent ethical or political philosophy. She never stops to consider what should replace the system she's helping to tear down. Revolution without vision often leads to chaos. Just look at history. The French Revolution led to the Reign of Terror, and many other revolutions have installed regimes worse than those they replaced. The philosophical problem here is that Katniss never weighs the potential consequences of her actions. She becomes an instrument of rebellion without questioning whether the resulting war, which costs countless innocent lives, is justified by the outcome. This relates to consequentialism in ethics, the idea that actions should be judged by their outcomes. But Katniss never performs this ethical calculation. Her resistance is purely reactive, not principled. Next, let's examine William Munny from the Western classic Unforgiven, a character whose journey reveals the philosophical error of romanticizing violence as justice.
You just shot an unarmed man.
Well, he should have harmed himself.
You'd be William Munny out of Missouri. Killer of women and children.
That's right.
Munny's philosophy might be summarized as, violence is sometimes necessary to right wrongs. The film presents him as a reformed killer who reluctantly takes up arms again to avenge a brutal assault on a prostitute. While this vengeance mission seems justified on the surface, it represents a profound philosophical problem. Throughout the film, Munny claims to have changed, to have left his violent past behind. Yet when confronted with injustice, he returns to violence as his solution. This contradicts philosopher Albert Camus, who warned against the logic of the scaffold, the idea that killing can ever truly serve justice. As Camus noted, violence only perpetuates more violence, creating an endless cycle. The film's most chilling moment comes when Munny says, deserves got nothing to do with it before executing a man. This reveals the philosophical bankruptcy of his position. He's abandoned moral reasoning altogether, replacing justice with raw power and retribution. Fourth on our list is Morpheus from The Matrix, a character whose quest for truth hides a philosophical contradiction.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Morpheus fights for human liberation from the Matrix, which seems noble, but his methods involve manipulating Neo and others, essentially saying, "I'm forcing freedom upon you." The philosophical error here is imposing liberation rather than allowing people to choose it. Morpheus doesn't give people all the information before extracting them from the Matrix. He makes the choice for them, deciding they're better off knowing the truth, even if that truth means living in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. This raises a fundamental question about freedom. Can freedom be forced upon someone? Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre would argue that authentic freedom must include the right to choose, even if that choice is comfortable ignorance. Morpheus's approach contradicts his own stated values. He claims to fight for freedom while simultaneously denying people the freedom to choose their reality. It's a philosophical inconsistency that undermines his moral authority. Our fifth philosophically misguided hero is John Anderton from Minority Report, a character whose work literally punishes people for crimes they haven't yet committed.
Why'd you catch that? Because it was gonna fall. But it didn't fall.
The pre-crime system in the film represents a fundamental attack on the concept of free will. It assumes that the future is predetermined and that people have no capacity to change their minds or resist their impulses. This deterministic view contradicts philosophers like Sartre and Kierkegaard, who emphasized human freedom and the ability to choose our actions, regardless of past tendencies or predictions. The philosophical error is assuming we can judge people for choices they haven't actually made. This undermines the entire basis of moral responsibility. If we punish people for what they would have done, we're essentially saying they had no real choice in the matter. John Anderton eventually recognizes this fatal flaw, but only after becoming a victim of the system himself. The film asks us to consider, is safety worth sacrificing the fundamental human capacity for choice? Sixth is Superman, particularly in Man of Steel, who embodies the philosophical error of divine intervention.
They will join you in the sun, Cal. In time, you will help them.
Superman's philosophy might be summarized as, "I know what's best and should guide humanity." This godlike being decides unilaterally when to intervene in human affairs, potentially robbing humanity of its autonomy and self-determination. This contradicts existentialist philosopher Soren Kierkegaard's emphasis on individual responsibility. When Superman swoops in to solve problems, he prevents humans from finding their own solutions and growing through struggle. The philosophical issue here is the fine line between helping others and controlling them. Superman's powers create an imbalance that makes true ethical relationships with humans nearly impossible. Additionally, Superman's interventions raise questions about dependency. If humanity relies on a godlike figure to solve its biggest problems, does this stunt our collective growth? Does it create a form of learned helplessness? Finally, we come to Sherlock Holmes, particularly Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal, who represents the error of extreme rationalism.
I need you to find someone. Careful not to cut yourself on this lethal envelope.
Holmes embodies the philosophy that emotions are irrational, only logic matters. He consistently dismisses feelings as irrelevant distractions from pure reason. This contradicts philosopher David Hume's famous insight that reason is the slave of the passions. Hume recognized that human decision-making is fundamentally emotional, with reason serving primarily to help us achieve what we already desire. Holmes's philosophical error is treating humans as purely rational beings, ignoring the emotional dimension of human experience that gives life meaning. He represents a cold, mechanistic view of humanity that's ultimately incomplete. By dismissing emotions, Holmes misses crucial information and fails to understand human motivation. This makes him brilliant at solving puzzles, but often terrible at relating to people, a crucial aspect of true wisdom. So, each hero represents a tempting, but ultimately dangerous approach to ethics and human relationships. We often absorb these problematic philosophies without even realizing it. That's because Hollywood wraps them in heroic packaging, complete with inspiring music and triumphant endings. But when we strip away the cinematic magic and examine the core principles, things get troubling. We can say that these popular characters haven't endured because their philosophies are correct. They've endured because their flaws are relatable. They represent simplified versions of ethical trade-offs we all struggle with. Thanks for watching.